The desert was already holding its breath when Luke Halston heard the cry. A thin, cracked sound, like wind dragging a nail across old wood, cut through the heat shimmer rising off the trail. Luke pulled his horse up so fast the gelding snorted and stamped. Something wasn't right. Not out here. Not on a road, so empty the sun itself felt lonely. He slid from the saddle, boots hitting dust that puffed like ghost smoke around his ankles. The sound came again, faint, begging, human. Luke moved fast. Beyond a crooked mesquite tree, half hidden by blown sand, a woman lay collapsed on her back, skirts fanned across the ground like wilted petals. Her breathing was shallow, shoulders trembling. And even before he reached her, Luke saw the strange way her legs were positioned, spread wide, rigid, frozen in place, as though the desert had forced her into that shape. He dropped beside her. "Ma'am? Hey, can you hear me?" Her eyelids fluttered like they weighed 100 pounds. When she finally forced them open, her gaze met his, blue eyes clouded with dust, pain, and fear older than the ground beneath them. She tried to speak. Only a rasp came out. Luke leaned closer. "Say it again." "I'm right here." Her throat swallowed dry air. "I can't see close my legs." Luke frowned. "What? What?" She flinched, a soft cry escaping her as he reached down, brushing sand from the fabric of her skirt. And that's when he felt it. The cold, jagged edge of iron. He swept more sand aside, and a gasp escaped him. A rusted steel trap, half buried, its jaws clamped tight around the heel of her boot, held her leg rigid. Worse still, the trap was nailed into a buried timber stake, hidden under the sand like a rattler waiting to strike. Someone had set this trap deliberately, and not for an animal. Luke cursed under his breath. "Hold still, ma'am. I'm going to get you out." She shook her head weakly. You shouldn't. They might come back." Her voice broke into tears. She didn't have the strength to cry. Luke steadied her cheek with a gentleness that surprised even himself. "Nobody's going to hurt you while I'm breathing." "What's your name?" Mara." The syllable fell like a feather. "All right, Mara. I'm Luke Halston. I'm going to free that foot, but it'll hurt. You stay with me." With a grunt, he dug his hands into the sand around the trap, rasped his palms. Sun hammered the back of his neck. He yanked once, twice. The stake gave an inch, but held firm like it had roots in hell itself. Mara whimpered. Luke's jaw clenched. "Who did this to you?" She didn't answer at first. When she finally did, her voice cracked into the stillness. They were hunting me." Luke froze. Hunting, and the trap was meant to hold her alive. He ripped the stake free with one violent heave. The trap loosened enough for him to pry her foot loose. Mara cried out, but he caught her before she fell, arms strong, steady, protective. As he lifted her into his arms, the wind shifted, cooler, almost watchful. And if you ask old folks around Red Mesa, they'll tell you that was the moment fate stepped onto the trail and set Luke Halston on the path to becoming a legend he never wanted to be again. The wind was rising by the time Luke reached the old line shack he used when driving cattle north. Its boards rattled like loose teeth, and the door hung crooked, but it stood, for walls and shade, which was more mercy than the desert usually offered. Luke pushed it open with his boot, carrying Mara inside. She stirred only when he set her gently on the narrow bunk. "You're safe," he said. For now. Her breaths came shallow and shivering. Dust streaked her cheeks. Sweat darkened her collar. Luke fetched the small water barrel in the corner and tipped a cup toward her lips. She drank like a woman who'd forgotten what water tasted like. When she could finally swallow without coughing, she leaned back. "Thank you," she whispered. Luke sat on a stool opposite her. "Now tell me you put a trap under your boots." Her hands bunched at her skirt's edge. For a moment, she stared at the floorboards, as if the truth lay nailed somewhere between them. "My husband," she began softly, "saw something he wasn't meant to see." Luke waited. He'd learned long ago that the worst truths needed time to climb out. "He was a surveyor," Mara continued. "A good man. Careful. Honest. Last month he discovered forged land deeds. Whole stretches of ranch land stolen on paper before anyone could fight back." Her voice trembled. He tried to confront them. But the men behind it, they weren't simple thieves. They were soldiers once. Hard men. Dangerous men. They call themselves the Red Mesa Riders. Luke felt the name settle in the room like a cold shadow. He'd heard of them, ex-cavalry, deserters, bounty hunters gone bad. Men who followed orders only when those orders paid blood money. They came for him at night. Mara's voice cracked. I heard the gunshot before I reached the door. When I opened it, he was already gone. Luke lowered his head in respect. They told me to keep quiet, that a widow with no family wouldn't be believed anyway. But my husband left me something. She reached shakily under her blouse and pulled out a small oilskin bundle. His notes, the real landmarkers, names, maps, dates, proof. Luke stared at the bundle. An entire empire of stolen land folded into something that could fit in a woman's hand. Mara swallowed hard. They want it, and they want me dead. Then why were you out in the open desert alone? Luke asked. A tear slipped down her temple. I ran. I thought if I kept moving, they'd lose my trail. But they found me yesterday. I escaped on foot when my horse spooked. I walked until I couldn't anymore, and then the trap. Her breath shuddered. Luke, they want to bury every witness. I'm the last one left. Luke stood, pacing once, twice. Mara watched him with a mixture of fear and hope, as if the direction of his next breath could change the shape of her future. You should leave me here, she whispered. You don't owe me anything. If they find you with me, they'll kill you. Luke stopped. The old boards creaked under his boots. A desert storm swirled outside, sand tapping the window like restless fingers. Mara, he said quietly, you don't know me. Then why risk your life? He looked at his hands, scarred, steady hands that had once drawn faster than any man alive. Hands he'd sworn never to use that way again. Because there was a time, Luke said softly, when I stood back and let someone die. And I'll never do that again. A long silence followed, heavy with the weight of unspoken histories. Finally, Mara whispered, Who? Who are you really? Luke didn't answer. Not yet. But outside, the desert wind carried a warning. Distant hoofbeats, faint but growing. And the old storytellers say that was the hour the past came galloping back for Luke Halston. And the riders came hunting for the widow he'd sworn to protect. The first hoofbeat struck the earth like a drum of war. Luke stiffened. Mara's breath hitched. The sound rolled through the desert, low and steady. Many riders, not one. Dust shook from the rafters of a lined shack, as if the building itself were afraid. They found me, Mara whispered. No, Luke said, checking the window slit. They found us. His voice was calm. Too calm. The kind of man used when he'd already lived through hell once and wasn't scared to walk back in. The riders weren't even trying to be quiet. Hoofbeats thundered across the hardpan, closer, closer. Luke counted by instinct. 7, no, 8 horses. 8 men hardened by sun and cruelty. He moved to Mara. Can you walk? She nodded, though her legs trembled beneath the bandaged boot. Luke grabbed his saddlebag, slung it across his shoulder, and helped her out the back door just as the riders reined up outside the shack. The two of them slipped into the narrow wash behind the building, protected by tall shale walls. The desert storm rolling in from the west had finally reached them. Wind howled, sand twisted in spirals. The sky darkened like a lid closing over a pot. Perfect cover. Luke pulled Mara close. Stay low. Stay quiet. They moved fast through the wash, the wind erasing their footprints as soon as they were made. Behind them, voices barked orders rough, shouting over the wind. Spread out. She can't be far. Halston's horse is out front. He's with her. Mara's eyes widened. They know your name. Luke didn't answer. The wash opened into a long stretch of badlands. Broken mesas, twisting ravines, and red stone jutting toward the sky like old bones. Luke guided her into a deep cut of rock, sheltered from the worst of the storm. Luke, Mara whispered, how are you so sure where to go? How do you know this land so well? He paused. The storm roared around them. Thunder rolled like distant gunfire. Because I spent a long time hiding in land like this, he said quietly. She swallowed. Hiding? From what? Luke stared at the horizon for a long moment, as if searching for a memory he wasn't sure he wanted to find. You ever hear stories, he began, of a gunfighter they call the Plains Phantom? A man who never missed. who showed up when towns were outnumbered and vanished before the dust settled. Mara blinked. That was a legend. A myth. Luke's jaw tightened. Not a myth, he said. Just a man who got tired of burying people. The realization struck her like a blow. You're him. He didn't nod. He didn't need to. Silence answered for him. But you disappeared, she whispered. Some say you died. Some things in a man ought to die, Luke said. I rode out one night and swore I'd never draw again. Never be that man again. Mara touched his arm. Then why come back now? Before Luke could answer, a rifle shot cracked through the storm. Stone exploded inches from his head. Mara gasped. They were found. Luke pulled her into a narrow crevice. Stay behind me. Voices echoed across the canyon. There they are. Luke Halston. Give us the widow and walk away. Luke stepped forward into the howling wind. His hat brim snapped. Sand stung his cheeks. Riders, he shouted back. You're not getting her. A harsh laugh answered him. You think you can stop us alone? Luke's eyes narrowed. I don't need to stop you. I just need to slow you down. Lightning cracked overhead, illuminating the canyon in white fire. And that was the moment, the old storytellers say, when the plains phantom rose from the dust of his own forgotten legend and walked straight into the storm to face the devils chasing him.